We're excited to have you with us. We are excited to have Nick Moss and Leah Abel, DCEs extraordinaires, experts at what they do. One of the things I appreciate about both of them is when we talk about the whole thing about community and youth, they are experts at it. They do it really well. I've seen them in practice. And so I'm excited to bring their insight and wisdom to you. I know they're very passionate about this as well. But let's start with this. Let's start with tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Oh, I'm going to go first?
You're going first.
All right. Nick Moss. I'm the DCE at St. Paul Lakeland in Lakeland, Florida. I'm a dad. I've got 3 girls. My wife, Candace, works in town in Lakeland as well. And we've been in Lakeland 13 years. And been a part of the gathering process. This is my 3rd gathering, working on that. So, yeah, it's good to be here up in the cold in St. Louis.
I'm Leah Abel, and I currently serve in Centennial, Colorado. I guess a couple of things I would share as far as why I'm passionate about this. I've gotten the chance to serve in a couple different kinds of congregations. I grew up in a little tiny country church, like 60 people on a Sunday, and just a few people in our youth group, and that community mattered to me. My first call as I served as a DCE was to a large congregation with a big youth group, like 70 kids on a Sunday night. And now I serve at more of kind of a medium-sized congregation. So I've got, 20, 30, 40 kids, high school kids plus middle school kids on a Wednesday night. And so I guess what I would say I've learned, no matter what you're doing, it's community matters. My little tiny community with whom I live would be my husband and my daughter, Amelia. And we love Colorado. St. Louis is nice, but it's a little sunnier in Colorado. I got to be honest with you.
Yeah. Florida too.
What I love, we've had about 50 planners in town planning the gathering, and it's been such a rich time, but it's been a cold time. So I'm sure as soon as you guys get on your plane and flights and head out, it'll probably be 65 here. So
probably.
Anyway, it's not always like this, right, Meredith? Not so much. John, I love this. By the way, there's a chat box. We want to encourage you to, if you've got some things that you want to ask or say, to use the chat box. We'll use that. We'll throw them for a loop, maybe here and there. I love John that you think Nick is a great boss. Excellent brownie points for you.
That's right.
Right. Excellent. Did you tell him to say that?
I did. Now he gets to go to Minnesota this summer. I told him if he said that, he'd go to the National Youth Workers Conference. So he's on the plane. He's going.
Yeah, you heard it here first. If you say that Nick is a great boss, Nick will fly you to Minnesota this summer. That's fantastic.
There's only one kid, Johnson.
That's great. Well, let's dive right in. A lot of studies have been done about the importance of community, and that there are a lot of, within churches as a whole, that people really, the community is a big thing for them in how they pick churches. We know within youth, it's a big thing as well. They love being together. So think about this from 2 perspectives, not just the youth. I mean, we want to focus in on that, but we're also talking about the bigger context of youth ministry, creating community within youth groups as well. So within your experience, tell us a little bit about why building relationships is so important in youth ministry, and also why it's so important in leading a group to the youth gathering.
Sure. Yeah. It's all about community. It's about a place where young people have a group of people that they feel safe with. I know that's a word that's thrown around a lot nowadays, but it's true, where they can be real with themselves. So just a generic, I would say, number 5 principle of youth ministry, building community and building relationships where there's trust built there with youth and adults. And then that leads into what you do on a day-to-day basis in youth ministry, and also leads into the youth gathering as you prepare to lead a group, whether you're going on a mission trip, certain event in this summer, or you're taking 10 kids to a youth work camps or an LCMS certain event, building community in that group, or you're preparing for the National Youth Gathering in about a year and a half. Building community is key, I think, to success before, during, and after, especially big events that you're planning in youth ministry.
And I think just like all around, there's so many places where students can go to find a community, but it a genuine community. So, I mean, they can join a soccer team, or they can be on their drill team, or they can, be in a robotics club or whatever. There's lots of places that they can go see community. But I think a youth group has potential to be such a different community, because it's a place where our primary goal is to point them to Jesus, who accepts them no matter what and loves them no matter what. And we can teach them what it looks like to be genuine community. And we got to teach them. I mean, adults aren't real great at that either. I think we all know that to be true. And I don't think that text messaging and email and social media has helped with that either. The thing that always amazes me, the kids who come and stay are sometimes the kids that I don't think will when they start coming to youth group or whatever. And they usually come and stay because they feel like they can be themselves there and it's going to be okay. And so that community is just huge. And it's huge just for where they're at in life. But like you said, for the event stuff, when you live together for a week or 5 days, when you travel on a bus, or you, are swinging hammers or whatever you're doing together, conflict is going to happen, because middle school boys and teenage boys have stinky feet. And it's going to get ugly at some point, right? Or somebody's going to say the wrong thing, or somebody's going to I liked so-and-so and he broke, whatever. All that stuff's going to happen. And so if you have a relationship to start with when you're having that, like dealing with that conflict, you're going to have a problem.
Absolutely.
And not only that, but then you're going to come home and it's going to be over. But if you've built something both on that trip and before, then it's going to.
Well, and what you talked about too, about, those people that stay, they're kind of because they don't have healthy community anywhere else.
Yeah.
They don't have healthy community in family. They don't have healthy community at school. But they found a community where they can connect. And we know that's the work of the Holy Spirit in their lives. So creating an environment that is not only going to help build community for those that have a decent life going on, but for those that are on the fringes, where they can see we're a healthy community. And maybe that's where they have to learn that God's going to use them later on in life to develop a healthy family community that maybe they're not living in right now.
Yeah, for sure.
That's great. Turn my mic back on. So hopefully, I know some of you said it's echoing me. So hopefully it is not. Let us know if it still is, and we'll work on that. So one of the things that I've noticed about the two of you, that when you are with your kids, or you're talking about your kids, you light up. Like you're engaged with your kids. You love what's going on in their life. You tell stories about, pray for them, and you're just completely engaged. I think in this day and age, there's so much competing for their time and their energy. So in that, how do you guys engage kids? All kinds of different kids, right?
Go ahead. How do you do that?
Well, the hard part is sometimes it depends on the kid. But I think, I'm an adult, I'm in my 30s. I should be confident enough to walk up to a kid at a youth event and talk to them. But it always catches me by surprise when I see the kid across the room, or on Sunday morning, I see the kid that I haven't seen or I don't know very well. And I feel intimidated to go talk to a 14-year-old, and I should know better, but I force myself to go over, because that kid's not coming to talk to me. Just to go over and what I try to do, the simple thing is say, can I try to be genuinely curious about who this kid is? Because they're all different. And some of those kids, you've got kids who are going to totally connect with you. You have a lot of things in common. And then kids where you just think, never have hung out in high school. That kind of kid, right? But if I can be genuinely curious about them, like, who are you and what makes you tick, that really works. We all have the experience where you have the kid where you're like, hey, how are you? Fine. What kind of sports do you do? And they list them one-word answers, which is also kind of intimidating. But the thing I've found is sometimes I can ask them more generic stuff if they aren't ready to talk about themselves, and say, okay, so I'm having a hard time. I don't understand Snapchat or something, and let them teach me, be a leader or be a learner, and let them show me and explain things either about themselves or about their peers. Because when they know that you're willing to listen, then they're going to start to tell you things that matter.
Right. And what you were talking about, that idea of going up and talking to a student, and John, who's on, is going to know this because he's going to know the kid I'm talking about in our congregation. I think I've gotten 5 words out of him in 3 years. It's the kid doesn't talk. But what we have seen is, we'll go up and continue to talk to him, whether he's going to talk to us or not. and we've built that relationship, and so he's comfortable around us, even though he doesn't talk. But there has been those moments where he'll open up, and we want to each other and go, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe he's talking." But like what Leah said, is it's your identity isn't in whether the kids like you or not,
right,
whether the youth like you or not, whether their parents like you or not. You're being Jesus by going up and knowing their name, genuinely interested, just like Jesus is in their life. And you build that relationship, and you might see fruit from that relationship in 3 weeks,
mm-hmm.
or it might be 10 years,
mm-hmm.
Or you might not see fruit from that. But you talk to students that you've invested in later on down their life, they remember that you talked to them, you were concerned with them. And then if you can create that culture in your church, pass it on to other adults.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just the person that's paid to do that, to say that is a great way to build a community in the church.
And I think, and in general as people, but as teenagers especially, they're used to adults being in a big hurry.
Yeah.
So if you can slow down, even if, this is not about a conversation, but hey, I'm going to go sit down. I have this girl, Brianna, who it takes a while to get her talking, but once you do, she's got stuff to say. But what I've learned is, if I'm going to sit down and say, Brianna, how's your day? I better be ready to stay, even if 13 other kids walked in while we're talking.
Mm-hmm. But
if I can do that for her, I'm teaching her that when I ask or when I sit, I will take the time, because we're busy people.
Right.
And they want someone to take time for them.
Well, and this, put it down.
Mm-hmm.
If your phone buzzes and you're talking to a kid, and you look at it, you've lost all trust with them. Their parents do it. Every adult does that. They look at their phone, and they might have been 5 seconds away from telling you something really important, and you just disengage with looking at your phone. Don't look at your phone when you're talking to a student.
And when they do it, okay, so fine, they looked at their phone, but you can teach them or show them something different.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Actually, I remember the two of you. You at one point used to say about 5 words, and now. Oh wait.
Yeah,
that never been your issue. Actually, Brandon's got a great question here. So he says this. You talk about how you do this for yourself, but he says, how do you help other adults slow down and take the time for students? Because obviously, it's for many people here, it's a team ministry kind of concept. So how do you teach other adults that?
Yeah. The best way, and sometimes the hardest, is modeling it. So you can say it till you're blue in the face, but until you actually you're with your adult leader and your phone buzzes and you pick it up and look at it, you're teaching them it's okay to do that. So, and I'm guilty of that. I mean, I do that, but it's simple things like that. If you're, you show up, let's say at a youth ministry event, you let the people know that you care about your wife. Hey, I'm not taking text messages. Call me if there's an emergency. If I know my phone's buzzing and calling, I don't know, somebody that's probably, but just don't look at your phone and lead by example. And that, I think that's a big one.
Yeah. The other thing that I try to do is to be kind of intentional. So we have on Wednesday nights is when we have our youth group. So we've got, a bunch of the adults in the room that are there, and we try to build intentional time that's unprogrammed. So we offer food every Wednesday. Kids can come and buy, Chick-fil-A or pizza or whatever it is that week. And so I ask adult leaders, I know they're coming from work, but, be there as early as you can. And then I try to prepare things in such a way that they have the space to be with kids. So stuff's taken care of, details are taken care of. Just go sit down. And sometimes I'll walk in the room and I'll say, hey, go sit down and ask Kate about her day. Because I just kind of have a sense that maybe Kate needs that. Mm-hmm. And so just opening that space by preparing well for adult leaders to do that. And, those of you who are serving in a congregation where you're like, I'm the lone, volunteer worker, do your best to try to get your stuff ready early so that when kids do walk in, you've got the space and the time, because it's hard when you're rushing and you're in the door, they can feel that. Mm-hmm. So to try to prepare well and be there early, and this one's way harder for me, to sometimes keep the door locked until 15 minutes before.
Oh, yeah.
Instead, because I would like to open the door and let them come in, but if I do that, then I'm not prepared, and they come in, I'm clearly distracted. So that's another kind of huge one.
Yeah.
That's great. I think, wow, Brandon, he's giving you a thumbs up, fist bump, claps. Nice job. Okay, here's another one. Paul has a question. He says, how do you balance a situation where a youth needs to talk on a Sunday morning, but you have other things you have to get to? Ever face that one?
Never seen that.
I think the first thing is you ask the question, is it an emergency? Is somebody, and obviously they may say yes, and then you can dig a little deeper. Well, is somebody in immediate danger? Obviously, if the answer is yes, then there's your priority right there. But if it's asking them, this is really important. I have a responsibility in this other room that I've got to get taken care of, but I am done at 10:05. I will meet you back here at 10:05. Or when can I meet you? When can I call you? Will you pick up your phone when I call you at 10:30? Let's meet. And you take that minute to schedule that time. And I think it sets a balance there too. If they understand that if somebody is in danger, then you're willing to drop everything for them.
Yeah, and I think it's scary sometimes as an adult, because you think, well, we're just getting into this good conversation, and if I walk away, then maybe we won't get back here. But you also have a responsibility to teach them boundaries. To teach them, what does it look like to be a healthy adult, and saying anytime somebody needs something, I'm going to drop everything and go do it, is not actually being healthy, and it's maybe not helpful for them. So 100% what Nick said. I'm so sorry, but I've got to be at this thing in 5 minutes. Can we, and then set that time, decide on when the conversation continues. I know it sounds scary, but you got to trust the Holy Spirit, and you got to trust that it's important to give those, to give boundaries for kids too.
Yep.
Excellent. Look at that. Heart, thumbs up, very generous. I love this. It's very affirming, isn't it? Yeah. Everyone should do a webinar when people can affirm them. This is great. So one of the things I know, and you guys are talking about really in this, creating culture, and a culture is a big thing, right? How do you want to be together? How do you agree to be together? There are all kinds of things with that. Nick, I know one of the things that you do within culture is covenants, right? Covenants are a big thing for you. Can you tell us a little bit why you do a covenant? Think about certainly the gathering. A lot of people do covenants for when they travel, whether it's a mission trip, gathering, other things. But what are some of those things in creating a culture or why you use a covenant for that?
Sure. So we specifically, like you said, for the gathering, for big events, but we've even created covenants even in small group ministries for some practicality there. But the reason behind a covenant versus using the word contract, using a little more biblical language there, is to create accountability. So I'll use the National Youth Gathering as an example. We create a covenant pretty soon after everybody's registered, and we sit down, and I've got a template that we pretty much don't change gathering to gathering, but we let the students in on the process. So we work them through expectations. What do you want how do you want everybody to treat each other? And it's funny, every gathering, every 3 years, it's the same way. I want to be the same. I want to be treated with kindness. I want to be heard if I've got a problem. But what you're doing is you're helping them own the document, as well as a fun thing to ask is, what do you expect from your adult leaders? That's always, I think, really healthy if you have especially a bunch of adult leaders going and a bunch of kids. Even if just one adult leader, 3 kids, how do you want me to act? And it's fun because we have fun usually always shows up. We want our adult leaders to have fun. And then, you also have to kind of get in the nitty gritty of, okay, if this happens, what's the consequence? It's just real world stuff. And then we have the kids sign it, the parents sign it, and the adult leaders sign it. And what that does is it just sets the tone for whatever you're doing, that expectation. So it's kind of can be fun is that students can go, hey, Nick, you're not having any fun. And you said you would. Okay, you're right. Let's have some more fun with this. Okay,
I'm sure that
let's all have ice cream. All right, I'll buy ice cream. But it also, if you have an issue.
What if that's in a covenant? You buy ice cream
if I'm not having fun. Yeah. Don't give them ideas. I hope students don't watch this. But also, if you do have an issue come up, then you're on the same playing field when you have to call the student in or phone the parents. You're all in agreement, and it makes life a lot easier when you have to deal with hard situations.
That's great. Buy ice cream. I've never seen that on the covenant before, but I think it should be. Yeah. So we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to involve a few of you on this. We're going to start with Leah, but then I want you to, those who are joining us today, to join in on this. So when you talk about culture, and actually, Nick, you just said have fun, right? That's kind of a nice image. Leah, if you were to use 3 words in kind of creating the culture of youth ministry, what would those 3 words? What 3 words would you use that you try to aim for within your youth culture? And along that, I'm going to ask all of you that are there, go ahead. What were 3 words that you would use that are pretty important in creating culture, youth ministry culture?
Okay, so my 3 words are going to be Jesus, honest, and open. So say Jesus because, frankly, it doesn't matter a whole lot for me if there's no Jesus. I mean, that's the point, right? They can join a club anywhere. They can be a part of community anywhere. They can go to therapy if they need someone to listen to them. But if they want to know Jesus, that's what we're about. And I'll say, going to the gathering, for instance, with a group of students to say, we're going to have fun. We're going to eat ice cream. We're going to be in a new city. We're going to hear bands. But the reason we're here is to know Jesus more. And so then that makes it an easy way to have the conversation of saying, you didn't go to any sessions today. What are your Jesus sessions? Like, where are you gonna get that? So Jesus being number 1. I would say honest. I want kids to know that they can ask real questions, and that if they bring honesty, they will be met with honesty. Because I think a lot of it's kind of a waste of time. Other than that, the other piece of that, I would say, like on a gathering or whatever, of being honest, is when you have Bible study, let's not just try to get it done as quickly as possible. Let's have the actual, real, honest conversation. When you've got, 3 girls are sharing a room, let's say, and something goes down that's weird, somebody's mad at so-and-so and whatever, you can have an honest conversation about how are we going to care for each other biblically. So that's big. And then open, I think, to say be open to what God's going to do and teach you. Be open to meeting a new person. Be open to that person that you always thought you didn't like because of 4th grade they stole your lunch or whatever it is. But so I think those would be my 3 words. So open, Jesus, and honest.
Excellent. I love so Paul's got Jesus, trust, service. Love those. Jesus, Amy, Jesus, relationships, prayer. Beautiful thing. I know, in fact, we just in our meeting, prayer was a big part of our focus, praying for you as leaders who are leading youth, praying for the youth of our different congregations. That was a central focus for us. It was pretty big. Brandon's got worship, connect, serve. Great words. So keep thinking about those 3, because I think I know for the 2 of you, right, you have those words, they're clear for you. You kind of have your aim, focus, and helping other adults to know that, hey, this is what we want to be about, which is really a big thing. So how about in creating culture? Sometimes we've always DCEs kind of been known for the crazy games and the different things we do and kind of creating community. And so tell us a little bit, how do you use games in community? Nice. Open question.
Game. Gaga ball, all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
How do you use games?
So it's interesting because I find that different groups do it differently. So my current youth group, not big game people. They are more so now, but I've had to explain or teach them, we're doing the games for the new people because they don't know how to talk to you. Okay. So I would say I probably use games mostly to break the ice, because if let's say I've never talked to, this other kid who's in the room with me. So I've never talked to him before, but if I'm forced to stand next to him during a game of elbow tag for, a minute, I might find out that we go to the same school. So I'd say I use them to break the ice a lot of times. And then I try to be aware of the group. So I am not athletic. My idea of a good time has nothing to do with sports brackets or volleyball, none of those things. I'm just bad at it. And so for me, as a teenager, it made me feel really self-conscious. Sports stuff made me feel self-conscious, and so I hated it. And so I try to be aware of the kids in the room. If I've got kids like that, how can I take a game and make it so it's not? Or if I have kids in the room that are brainiacs, let's go that route. Or if I have kids who really are that's their gift, is the physical and not the conversational, give them a chance to shine. So I would say I try to use games to to break the ice, try to use games to put kids in proximity to each other. Like you have to be physically next to each other. A lot of times that helps, or just to build relationship. If it's more cooperative games, I probably like cooperative games the best.
And there's that document, right? We have games listed, right, Meredith? Yeah, we got games listed in that document, which is good. Yeah, games are it's a tool to build community. And so, like Leah said, I just echo that. You got to know your group of kids. I just had confirmation retreat and on our campus, and the 6th grade boys, all they wanted to do during the free time was play soccer. And you know what? There were a couple of kids that went to different schools that played soccer. So I didn't have to go and try to organize volleyball, but they played during free time. They played soccer. They got to know each other because that was their love was soccer. So just know your group and sparingly and not just trying to focus on this game is going to solve all our relationship problems and how kids get to know Jesus. It's just a tool on the tool belt to connect students.
And even if you have 4 kids in your youth group, like games can be super powerful, especially like simple, like more conversational games, like 2 truths and a lie or something like that, where it's a chance to get to know each other. Like I've got a stack of books on my shelf that are like would you rather questions or 1,000 questions to ask teenagers. Go on Amazon and look for used books for like 99 cents. You can find all these books, and we'll just do like a flip through, like give me a number between 1 and 500, and you just flip to that number and ask the question, and everybody. And that tends to be pretty disarming.
And I'll say the last thing, because you were not athletic, and we have those kids too.
I am not athletic.
But if you're playing a game that is athletic, you give the kids a choice. If you don't have to play, but you're going to sit over here and you're going to keep score, or you're going to be engaged somehow. You give them a job so you don't alienate 4 or 5 kids that are just going to sit on the sidelines and watch.
And it's hard to decide if you're gonna. Sometimes I'm like, this isn't all play, we're playing. Like it's just not an option. And other times you see the kid who's engaged in a conversation with an adult leader, leave them alone. Yeah. Just let them keep talking, and the rest of you go play.
Right. Actually, so Nick, I feel like there's a little bit of an explanation that needs to happen. So John talks about you play Nickball, your rules constantly change. So would you like to respond to this?
Students just need to learn that life changes. You don't always get to make the rules. So and if I'm losing, maybe make change the rules.
Yeah. And if you're so what you're saying is a 4th word would be winning.
Winning, absolutely. Hey, if I'm in charge, we may have a good opportunity to win.
It's difficult to create a culture of trust when the rules are always changing.
You
want to know what to expect.
It is a little bit. I should probably take the advice.
So tell me. So also, John says something about. Tell us a little bit about Ubuntu.
Okay. So there's the great thing about being a part of the National Youth Planning Committee is you get to gain some more tools, and that was a tool that was used to mix us up, and it's actually a really cool game. My students hate it, but it's a card game. It's like Spot It, if you've seen Spot It, but it's got all these different types of games that it's you have a card, it's got multiple images on it, you got to go find people, and you might say, find the image that describes your week, and so there's 6 different images, and you say, well, I'm picking a car because I feel like I've been in a car all week. It creates great conversation. My high school students find it and hide it from me around the youth room because they don't like it that much. But when I find it, then I use it on. Yeah, it's great. Go get it online. I think it's a great tool. I would highly recommend it. Just if you come to St. Paul Lakeland, it's not going to have any effect whatsoever for your high school students.
But if you do go there, you'll take them out for ice cream.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it's part of your covenant. So that's awesome. So we're gonna flip a little bit and kind of change the subject a little bit. So we talked about culture. How about we talk about creating community? Not all the students are the same, right? Many different youth, lots of different things going on, and every once in a while, maybe there's a difficult youth in your group. Maybe. Have you ever had that experience? Not. Right, think about this. One of the things I think that breaks my heart is to think about all the different things going on in the lives of youth, whether it's personal choice or family situations, depression or school pressure, and how they deal with life comes out a lot it comes out in a lot of different ways with that. So how do you engage students who are going through difficult times in their personal and family lives, and or just creating students who are a little bit more difficult? What do you guys do?
So we have a term that we say EGR, extra grace required. And I think, some students, just for whatever reason, it could be that, we talk about a lot on the spectrum. We've had kids with Asperger's and things like that, where social situations, like talking about playing games, it was really hard for them. And so what does that look like, and being sensitive to that? So there's going to be some extra grace required in that, and you have to be sensitive to that. There's also kids that are just dealing with so much crap at home that it spills over into other parts of their life or at school. And so they're hard to deal with. One thing that we've noticed, or at least that I've noticed that works well, is you try to develop some one-on-one relationship with them as much as possible. And whatever event you're at, you try to bring them alongside you and show them the appropriate way to maybe respond or act in a situation. So, we've done that on mission trips, and you're like, let's have prayer groups you're putting kids in or things like that. You're very purposeful about how you place that kid, or you place them with a really strong, sensitive student, senior that just, and then you pull that senior aside and you say, look, we're putting Josh in your group. Just, be aware, I'm putting you with them because I know you can help take care of them. As well as, I think, I would say, we've done this on trips where it's like, hey, you're coming to wash dishes with me. And it's not necessarily a punishment for them. You're showing them how to serve because you're washing dishes alongside with them. Those are some things.
Yeah, like I think if it's the kid who's tough, not just because life is maybe tough, but they're like the tough kid that it's like, oh, I got so-and-so in my group and he's just tough, or she. I think the other part of that is I always will say, hey, so-and-so, I put them in your group because I do think that matters. The other thing I try to do is be sensitive to the fact that that person who got that hard kid in their group needs a break. And so being intentional about, so maybe they're in the same family group, but they're not in the same work group, and then they're not in the same like room, hotel room, whatever. So I do think that matters too. I've learned that the hard way, that those kids that are really good at taking care of other kids sometimes get burnt out too. I'll say, as far as, definitely would echo what you said about one-on-one time with those students. And then the other thing I would say is expectations. So I had a student last youth gathering. She's tough. I would say in 16 years of youth ministry, the toughest that I've had. Had a tough conversation with her and her mom and said, this is the expectation I have if you come on this trip. And she's got stuff going on at home that is not her fault. But the fact that you're hurting and the fact that you've got stuff going on doesn't mean you treat other people this way. And so we had real clear conversation, like, you're not allowed to do A, B, and C. And then the adult leader and I, the primary adult leader and I had some conversations about, okay, so how do we hold her to that and show her grace? Because it's not fair to hold her to the same standard that I might hold this other kid, because it's just going to be too much. It's going to crush her. And so just being clear about expectations, I think, is huge. It's huge for those kids. And then just know that sometimes, I think back to a mistake I made on a youth retreat once, on a mission trip. I had a kid who told me she thought she was going to have a panic attack, and I thought she was looking for attention, and she had a panic attack. And what I learned from that, the panic attack was over the fact that I told her she couldn't have her cell phone until the next morning. And when I look back at that, I think, why didn't I say to this kid, take my phone and go call your mom? Like, like, why did I not do that? And I put her through all this junk for the night. And she needs to own some of that too. But I guess I learned from that, sometimes you need to break the rules.
Yeah.
And you need to make the exception.
Well, and Joel said, if you have two kids who disagree and are frustrated with each other, how do you help them talk it out? I learned the hard way. I knew I had two kids that didn't like each other. We were loading into a mission trip into a church, and they decided to go at it, fists and all. There's a hole in the wall from a pool stick, fun stuff like that. But if you have disagreements between two students and you just think it won't escalate on a trip, especially, don't put your head in the sand, I guess I would say. And it is not easy to have those conversations, but if you have the conversations early, if you set those expectations, even if you have to do a separate covenant with the two people that disagree with each other and say, we're going to sit down, we're going to talk about Matthew 18, and we're going to come together, and we're going to set these expectations whenever you two are together at a youth event. This is how we're going to hold you each other accountable. Yeah. And when you don't, this is what's going to happen. Students will rise to, most students will rise to that level of expectation you set. If you ignore it or you try to brush it aside, they're going to learn to weave through that and get what they want. And
I'd add one more thing too. If you've got a kid, whether it's like some form of autism or whatever it is, you've got some special needs, please sit down with their parent and have a conversation. Yeah. Don't assume that the parent doesn't want to talk about it, because they know their kid better than you. So having conversations like, so what are Jack's triggers? Can you help me understand? When this happens, can you tell me what would work best? Because what you don't want is you're on some trip and then the kid goes and calls their mom with the phone that they hid in their bag, and then they come back, the parent calls you and is having a freak out, and you really don't know the parent well because you spent time on the relationship with the student. So have those hard conversations early, and if it doesn't go well in the conversation with the parent, you might need to think about not taking a child.
Yeah.
I think that'd be, as you guys were talking about stories, I think that'd be a great book, like stories that you hope parents never hear about what happened on the youth trip or youth group. Wouldn't that be good? Yeah. If there's any writers out there that would like to contribute, maybe we can start that. So one of the questions that I had is, especially you talk about culture, and it's not always the leader, right? You have other leaders that come alongside you. How do you help other leaders? And then I think like a gathering, you're with kids for a long period of time, anywhere from 5, 7, 9, 10 days, mission trips, same thing. How do you help other leaders who not only dealing with difficult youth, but sometimes maybe the difficulty of another adult leader who is having a bad day? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think that's, we can't forget that adult leaders have lives too. And they, especially if they've got a full-time job and a family, they're giving up a week of vacation. A lot of times it's on their time. And so they're coming in with expectations as well. What are they going to get out of it? So what I've learned from experience, and one example I'll give is, and John knows this story, the first time I planned a gathering, I did everything the same basically for prepping youth group that I did for the previous gathering. The problem was I wasn't going to be with our youth or adults at all for that whole gathering. And so what happened was when the adults got to the gathering, they imploded a little bit, I think trying to figure out who was in charge, because I didn't set them up to say, okay, this person's in charge of this person's in charge of this, and the kids were expecting me to be around. And so I didn't set them up at all for success, and we had to have some conversations on it kind of midway through the gathering, how we figure it all out, and that was not a fun conversation. So what I've learned now is I help on the front end to get things going, and then I back off. I don't even show up to meetings at the end. I want the students to know and the parents to see I'm not the main leader for this trip, and the main leader is this person, and they are in charge. And so it's setting that expectations, and then we've so if you are maybe you're a super volunteer parent and you're going to help get everybody to the National Youth Gathering or get everybody to a mission trip, but you're not the adult leader going on it, spend some time talking with the adult leader that's going to be in charge of the event, and how are you guys going to set up expectations of who's in charge on the trip.
Yeah, and I would even say a lot of times when I've done covenant stuff like you talked about, I'll meet with the adult leaders before. We're going to meet at 6 o'clock with the youth. I'll meet with the adult leaders at 4 and have snacks or something and talk through what are things that have to be in this covenant for you. because because sometimes you find there's like a thing that's really important to one adult leader that maybe it's not a big deal to you, but it matters to them because they see it as disrespect if a kid does X thing. Mm-hmm. If it's a have to, like, have the conversation for the sake of that other adult leader so that it can be reflected there. The other thing that I do is usually sometimes we don't write it down, but we'll go around and say, what's the most important thing to you? Just with the adult leaders, and have them meet. So it's a covenant of sorts where we say, this is how we're going to be together. And usually by the end of the trip is when the adult leaders start being mad at each other. Mm-hmm. So-and-so didn't stop at the rest area and everybody else did. And somebody's mad and so-and-so's lost. And maybe we hit a deer with a van. That may have happened. I'm just saying.
I did that a couple years ago in North Carolina. Yeah, it was awesome.
And so you need to have those conversations ahead of time. What are we going to do if? The other big thing, and I would say this no matter what, find a time every day on your youth trip, gathering, whatever, for the adult leaders to be together, just the adult leaders. Mm-hmm. Even if it's 30 minutes, even if it's, you got to get up at 6 a.m. for coffee or you got to stay up late, 30 minutes, just the adults to debrief, mm-hmm. To be silly and laugh, because sometimes you need to make fun of that EGR kid. Yeah. Just a little bit, like not in an ugly way, but you just need to get out of your system together.
Right.
In Christian love.
Right. Absolutely. And I appreciate that, because what I would say, if you're the point person for sending, whether you're sending a kid to a district gathering that's just 3 days, mm-hmm. or sending a national youth gathering or whatever, figure out ways that your congregation can support those adult leaders, mm-hmm. Whether it's ahead of time writing them notes that you give them throughout the week of encouragement, even from your pastor. That's a way to do that. Have your pastor write out some notes to these adult leaders, thanking them about halfway through the event, whatever that might be, or even if they're but if they're a small group leader through your ministry and they're leading middle school Bible study throughout the year, find out those ways in which you can encourage them. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how much a note from a member of the church, a pastor, somebody that a parent, somebody that appreciates what they're doing, will go a long way in lifting them up. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. I've got one more question for you, so we're almost at that time, and I want to encourage you, if any of you have questions, now is your chance to type them in that you can ask Nick and Leah. So here's the other question. Now, in particular, we're talking about the youth gathering being a pretty big thing, or sometimes it's a mission trip, or maybe it's a spring retreat that's a really big thing. But not all the kids go on that, right? Sometimes you have youth who, for a variety of reasons, can't do that. How do you help creating a kind of the big community? How do you help those kids who can't do the experience? How do you help them be a part of that and not left out?
Well, one of the ways that it had no amazing light bulb idea on this fell into my lap was last National Youth Gathering. I had some kids that wanted to help with the fundraising that weren't going on the trip. They just wanted to show up and be with their friends. And at first I was like, well, I don't know that. And I'm like, wait a minute. They just want to be a part of the community. So absolutely come, don't shoo those away that want to help. And so that's one way, include them in things. I think, and that was actually a fun thing that we had kids show up for our fundraising that didn't even benefit from it financially, but they benefited from being a part of the community. So that's one way is don't just assume that people don't want to participate because they're not going on an event. I would say be more invitational to things like that.
Yeah, and I think even like the gathering does a really great job with pre-gathering Bible studies and things. Like, so sometimes if there's several of those or things that I can find from the eSource or whatever, I'll pull those and we'll do those like on Sunday morning. And even for the kids who aren't going, they can still be, a part of those things. And then maybe you say, okay, here's 3 things during this year leading up that we're going to do that's just the kids going on the gathering are going to do. But I'd really caution you against building your whole year around here's this one trip. Because it can really leave kids kind of feeling out a little bit. Another thing that I'd suggest is, let's say you've got, a couple of kids in your group who can't go, Uncle so-and-so is getting married or something. Send them a postcard from the gathering that says, hey, we were thinking about you, we got you this thing, whatever. Make them feel like they matter. The first time I ever met my first professional, whatever, youth group, they were getting off the bus from the National Youth Gathering. And they got off the bus, and I'm meeting these kids, and I'm thinking, I just moved across the country, and I hope these kids like me. And they're getting off the bus, and they brought me a gift, and then they took time to introduce themselves. And I think about that moment with those kids, like they had just had this super close relationship conversation, and the youth leader at the time, who was a mom of a student, got off, and she said, we just did a Bible study on the bus, and part of what we talked about was how do we share what we just experienced with the people who couldn't. And so intentional conversations about what are we going to say when we get home to these people who weren't there, and that's just huge.
Yeah, kind of what you're saying, that they came off and then they were personally sharing it, is then to think through whether it's a mission trip, a gathering, a national youth gathering, is how do you create those moments in your congregation for those kids to share, whether it's up front, telling a testimony, a story, a worship, Bible class, a breakfast, figure out ways, even, I mean, it's, newsletter articles, a kid actually writes the newsletter article. So think about ways in which, students can share their stories that way.
Or even you do silly things with social media, bring a picture of so-and-so and you're taking pictures of them everywhere. Like that stuff matters because it says that they were missed.
Right. Absolutely.
Those are great suggestions. One of the things that's on our heart, I think, in the youth ministry office too, is to continue to equip you. So we've got some plans, and we're talking through some things of how do we take pieces and parts of the gathering and let adult leaders back home use those for kids who weren't there, so that they can share in pieces and parts of the gathering as well. So you'll be hearing more about that from us as well. Nick and Leah, thank you so much for giving of your time and just who you are. I just love how you guys do your jobs and how much you love your students. Get these two talking about their students, and you just see how much they love what they do, which is a beautiful thing. Here's what I'd like to do. Can I just wrap this up in prayer? Absolutely. Can I do that? Let's pray. Heavenly Father, you have given us incredible opportunity to walk with teenagers that you have uniquely created and that you love deeply. Help equip us, give us wisdom in developing those relationships during this critical time in their lives. We pray for all of our youth who are going through difficult times. Use us to help point them to you as their refuge and strength. We give you thanks for Leah and Nick and how you've used their gifts to impact your kingdom. And I pray for every youth leader that through the Holy Spirit that you would help create gospel-loving communities that make an eternal difference wherever they are. We ask all of this in your name, the name of Jesus. Amen.